Hello, everyone on YouTube. Welcome to another live stream. Happy Wednesday to everybody out there. And do we have a topic for everyone today? We're going to be discussing some of the issues facing American home buyers. I know this has kind of been beat to death over the course of the last couple months and even the last year or two. But we're going to talk about a brand new study today that talks about the average income needed, or the salary needed in order to purchase the average home here in America. And it's not surprising. So let's just get right into it. Again, welcome into the live stream. I'm glad that you could join me for another great we're going to go for about an hour today. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the chat. I will be keeping an eye on it. I would love to know where you're watching from, where in the world or where in the United States you're watching from. So if you're in the chat right now, go ahead and post just where you're watching from, and would love to hear from you. And then we're going to start things off. We have a couple articles. We have a little bit of a little video to watch. But essentially today we're going to cover just the difficulty that the middle class is having buying homes. And as we all know, for the longest time in America, the middle class has kind of been the economic machine that has kept things going. And now that middle class is just having a hard time when it comes to real estate. The moral of the story is this: in 22 states across our nation, the home buyer needs an income of $100,000 or more in order to just afford the average home. This is just the average priced home in that given region. And we're going to cover some of those states, and you'll see that there are some states that are on the highest state, which, spoiler alert, is California. A home buyer needs almost $200,000 in yearly salary in order to obtain the average priced home. Now, keep in mind, this is per buyer. This is not per person. So if you are buying a property with a spouse, a partner, heck, even a friend, and there's two incomes, then obviously that number is going to be cut in half. So just keep that in mind. But still, the fact of the matter remains that there's a lot going on. So let's get right into it. We're going to jump over to our first article. And the first one comes from NPR. As always, guys, this doesn't have to do with politics. Obviously, Joe Biden, our president, is on the thumbnail for this video because, well, he's the president right now. And over the last 4 years, we've really seen a shift. So it really doesn't matter who the president is, whether it was Trump or Biden or Clinton or Obama, the president's face would be on the thumbnail today. So regardless of who that is. So this is not necessarily a political thing. This is just what's currently going on under his current political installment right now. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Let me get this going. Bingo. So we're going to see that right now. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that y'all can see a little bit easier. There we go. Perfect. All right. So again, this is from NPR. You'll need more than $100,000 in income to afford a typical home, study shows. And again, just want to make you guys aware that this is as of April 2nd, 2024. So this is current. This is just a day ago. And there was a new study, which we'll get into that was released that kind of spurred some of these articles that you may have seen popping up. You've heard that it's a tough time to buy a house, but exactly how tough is it? A pair of recent studies predicts that you'd need to earn more than $100,000 per year to comfortably afford a typical home in much of the US right now. Now, the reason that this is kind of a newer thing is because we've known for a long time that the average price of the average home in America has gone way up. But for the longest time, that six-figure threshold was only applicable to a few states, the major ones, New York and California, Hawaii, places like that. But now we're seeing it affect a lot more states. And some of these states, which when we get to the rankings, you'll see some of these states were always kind of thought of as being affordable, and now they're actually kind of not. So let's dig in. There's a major jump from just 4 years ago, and it comes at a time when fewer homes are on the market and mortgage rates and housing prices have been high. House hunters, meanwhile, haven't seen their wages increase at the same pace. Of course, we have seen good wage increases, but come on, let's be real. Nothing is outpacing the growth in home prices. And there's a lot of factors in that, and we'll dig into that later. Housing costs have soared over the past 4 years as drastic hikes in home prices, mortgage rates, and rent growth far outpaced wage gains, according to Zillow senior economist Orphe. Oh boy, if you guys can come up with this last name, I'll give you a bonus point, said in a statement. The six-figure threshold. Zillow analysis released in February found that prospective homebuyers would have to earn more than $106,000 annually to be able to buy a typical home in the US. This is where it gets pretty wild. That's an 80% increase from the $59,000 yearly income the website predicted a household would need to comfortably afford a home in 2021. This stat right here, this one sentence, really encapsulates the difficulties that people are seeing and experiencing in just being able to afford an average home. And that's really a key thing. We're talking about an average home here. We're not talking about, your forever house, the McMansion, the home on 4 or 5 acres, or, some crazy sprawling 3,000 square foot place. This is just for an average home. And just 4 years ago, it was $59,000. Now, of course, we've had a pandemic since then. The economy has shifted. We've experienced really bad inflation over the last few years. That's one of the worst things an economy can face, is really high inflation, which luckily now seems to be somewhat under control. Well, I don't want to say under control, but it's kind of trending in the right direction. But this just goes to show you an 80% increase from 59,000 to 106,000 in just 4 years. And honestly, we need some relief, and we're going to talk about maybe some ways to get that relief later on in the stream. As always, if I just saw a bump in viewership, some new people have joined. If you have questions or comments, type them into the comments. Happy to talk about those. Also, I'd like to know where you're watching from. So if you can pop into the comments with where you're watching, whether that's in the United States or somewhere in the world, I'd love to know. In a separate study released on Monday, the financial website Bankrate suggested Americans would have to rake in $110,871 per year to afford a median-priced home, which the outlet says costs $402,343. The income level surged nearly 50% from its 2022 estimate. So they're saying that the median priced home in this situation is a little over $402,000. And in order to make that work by all the typical metrics of what makes a home affordable, the Americans buying that home would have to earn $110,000, a little over $110,000. Now, again, if you're buying a home with a spouse, a partner, a friend, a family member, then we can chop that in half. And obviously, if you're buying it with 3 people, then chop it into thirds. But still, it's not about the number in this situation, although the number is really high. It's about the increase in that number that is really the biggest drag on Americans right now. Home values are near record highs, and if you want a house, you have little choice but to pay a high price, according to one of the analysis at Bankrate. And we're still seeing this, unfortunately, fortunately for home sellers, but unfortunately for home buyers. We're still seeing a situation where it is a seller's market in most areas. Again, I want to take a second here. Real estate is hyper local, and obviously this is a live stream on YouTube that can be watched by anyone all over the world. What I am saying certainly could vary depending on where you are. Where I am, which is a town called Claremont, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. We're about 30, 35 miles east of downtown LA. We are in LA County. My experience and what I'm speaking to really does identify with more of a metropolitan or major suburban area. So in this area, very desirable place to live. We have great public schools. The demand still is extremely high, and inventory is still historically very, very low. So when the article talks about needing an increased annual salary to afford the median priced home, and then couples that with home values are at record highs, and if you want a house, you've got little choice but to pay that price, that's why it's still a really basic supply and demand issue. And if you've watched my other streams and my other YouTube videos, you know this is something that we've talked about before. The national median household income, according to data from the US Census Bureau, is around $74,500. So average household income is $74,500. And according to the study, Americans would have to rake in $110,871 per year to afford the median priced home. This is the big disparity. This is a lot of money that we're talking about. We're talking around $35,000 as the disparity between what the average income needed would be for the average home versus what the actual median household income is. And this is why it's a problem. Location, which, by the way, those are the first three rules of real estate. Of course, those figures are based on national data, and home prices vary depending on where you want to live. Bankrate found that aspiring homeowners in 22 states and Washington, D.C. should earn at least $100,000 per year to afford a typical home. And this kind of goes along. We have 22 states plus DC, so like 22 and a half, not 23 because DC is not a state, but whatever. Buyers in the South and Midwest require less to pay for new digs than those in the West or Northeast. I don't really think that this is going to come as a major surprise to really a whole heck of a lot of people. It's been known for quite some time that areas in the South and in the Midwest typically do have higher rates of affordability for real estate than those in the West or the Northeast. And who's to say what that reasoning is? Maybe it's weather. Maybe it has to do with major business centers, political ideas. Who the heck knows? But man, that's a lot. 22 states where you have to have over $100,000 in income to afford, again, just an average priced home. It's crazy. The states that saw the largest increase in annual income necessary to buy a typical home were Montana, Utah, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Arizona. This, and we're going to see the whole list in the next article I have. It has all 22 ranked. And so that one is going to be kind of interesting to go over because we'll be able to see how each state stacks up. But this is a little bit of a preview. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised that when you look at those places, Montana, Utah, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Arizona, yikes. I mean, for a long time, Arizona it's been up and coming for a while, but Arizona was always thought to be a very affordable place. Same with Tennessee and Utah. Again, very affordable places, historically speaking, that are seeing a huge increase, and they're the ones that had the largest increase. I will say, this is anecdotal. This is not empirical evidence. This is just from what I've seen. A lot of people in my area, again, I'm in Southern California, just outside of LA. When I hear people that are saying, oh, I'm moving out of state, I'm hearing a lot of people move to Arizona, Tennessee, and South Carolina. So I don't know if that has anything to do with why these areas are having the biggest increase in income necessary to purchase a home, but perhaps that's it. That very well could be. We could be seeing wealthy buyers from areas like New York, California, Seattle, Washington area, move to areas that have more affordability. Obviously, we've had a little bit of a shift in what people are able to do in terms of work. Working remote took off in the pandemic, and it's hung around quite a bit. So perhaps some of these people are moving from areas that typically they wouldn't be able to afford even an average price home. Maybe they're priced out completely, and now all of a sudden they can take their money and go to a market such as Arizona, Tennessee, South Carolina, and really make their money go further and get into home ownership. Thus, that would raise the barrier to entry for people currently living in those areas. And it could also not be just young people that have remote jobs now, but also older buyers and sellers. And again, if you watched my last live stream on Boomergeddon and the silver tsunami, I wouldn't be surprised if the metrics came out that said there are more boomer aged home sellers here in California looking to buy in those very states. Also, not to mention that weather in those states is not too bad. Obviously, it can be cold and hot in some of those states, but Arizona has a pretty good climate unless you're, in the valley. Phoenix, it gets very warm. Tennessee is pretty desirable climate. So there's a whole host of reasons that could be contributing to that, and why we're seeing that. In Seattle, New York City, Boston, and 4 major metro areas in California, which consist of San Jose, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego, prospective households would have to earn more than $200,000 per year to afford a typical home, according to Zillow. That is bananas. That is wild. And of course, interest rates aren't helping anything with that. Interest rates are only further amplifying the need for home buyers to generate even more income so that they can qualify and comfortably afford. I think also another thing too is that, millennials and Gen Z home buyers are probably going to have to get used to 2 things. Number one, they're probably going to have to get used to smaller homes and smaller properties. And number 2, they're going to have to get used to allocating more of their monthly income to housing costs. And it does suck. And hopefully that doesn't cause too much strain on those segments of buyers. But we've always kind of talked about, your housing cost should be 25, 30% of your take home pay. That might have to shift, and it may mean spending less on other things. It may mean spending less on vacations and going out and experiences, which millennials love a good experience. That's what we like to spend our money on. And maybe that will just have to be a trend that catches on. But regardless, that's a ton of money to have to earn in order to just buy the average home. Again, hopefully you're trying to buy a home with dual income. It certainly is going to make it much easier. The $100,000 a year job is not what it used to be, especially in those major areas, Seattle, New York, and San Francisco, San Jose, LA, and San Diego. It's not easy to find a $100,000 a year job, but it's not rare anymore. And it's not certainly what it used to be. I remember, when I was a kid, if you knew someone that made $100,000 a year, that was like crazy. You're like, whoa, they must be millionaires. And now it just seems as though that has become sort of middle class, especially in those areas. Memphis, Cleveland, New Orleans, and Birmingham were among the most affordable cities. But Zillow found only 3 major metro areas in the US where home buyers making the median income could afford a typically priced home. That's Pittsburgh, St. Louis, and Detroit. So some wild stuff coming out. Again, this is from NPR. I want to now switch over to an article from MSNBC that talks about, again, it's more in the same vein. It came out a couple days ago, but the reason I wanted to bring this article up, that I want to go through this one, is because it actually ranks all 22 areas, well, plus DC. It ranks all those areas from basically the highest income needed to the lowest income needed, all being over $100,000 for these 23 areas. So let me switch over and share a different screen for you guys. Boom. And I'll make this a little bit bigger so that y'all can read it. Sorry about the ads. There's going to be some ads in here. Okay. So again, this article is as of yesterday morning. It came out. You need to earn $100,000 a year to buy a typical home in these 23 U.S. places, which I've read this headline multiple times now, and it's still crazy to me. All right. Most people don't earn 6 figures, but it's become the new benchmark for whether or not you can afford a typical U.S. home. Americans need to earn an annual income of $110,871 to buy a median priced home. We kind of saw this, a 46% increase since January 2022. And this is kind of stuff that we've heard before. To calculate home ownership costs, Bankrate assumes a 20% down payment, no HOA fees or mortgage insurance, and a 30-year fixed mortgage rate, 30-year fixed mortgage interest rate of 7.05%. Now, a couple things I want to address here. Number one, 20% down has always been thought of as like the gold standard for a down payment. I really think it's important for buyers to get that out of their head. I know people like Dave Ramsey and financial gurus will say that 20%, it's either 20% or bust. And I'll tell you this, 20% is great. Now, the reason 20% is great is because when you come in with a 20% down payment, you do not have to pay PMI, or private mortgage insurance. Private mortgage insurance is something that was started after the 2008 great financial recession. And what it does is it actually charges home buyers more, or not, well, the borrower more in the form of a fee for borrowing less than 20%. And the reason behind that is banks see that the loan is more risky because it's only 5 or 10 or 15% down. So they charge you a fee because the loan is more risky. Now, the problem I've always had with PMI is that, well, for the most part, it wasn't home buyers' fault there was a great financial collapse. It was crappy predatory lenders and really bad loose lending criteria that led to the great financial collapse. So why are consumers paying for PMI? That just never made sense to me. And honestly, I don't think it's very fair, but what am I going to do about it? Now, the important thing to realize with PMI is that even if you only put 10% down or 50% down, the moment that your loan to value ratio of your property reaches usually between 20 and 22%, the PMI can be deducted. Not only can it be taken off, but it has to be taken off. So you could come in with 15% down or 10% down. And if the market continues to increase, or you make improvements on the house to up that value, and you can go back to the bank and say, hey, bank, look, I want to get an appraisal. I'll pay for the appraisal fee. And if that appraiser comes back and says, hey, guess what? Now your loan to value ratio is 25%. They take PMI off, and that comes off your mortgage payment, and you immediately start saving that per month. So while it's a great idea to come up with 20% down, certainly is not mandatory. The other thing is if you keep waiting to get into the market until you have 20% down, it's going to just be it's going to be like you're on a treadmill and you're going to be trying to run and catch up to a goal that keeps moving, because home prices are going to keep increasing, at least what we can see for the foreseeable future. So if you're at 10% or 15% and you think to yourself, oh, I'm just going to wait till I have a 20% down payment, that goalpost is going to keep moving. It's better to get into the property now, if you can afford it, with that 10% down payment, and then your mortgage payment's fixed. You know what you're going to pay every month. You can keep saving. And like I said, when you get to that 22-ish% loan to value, you can get rid of that PMI. So you are not stuck with PMI forever. You can get rid of it. And oftentimes it's better to get in with a 5 or 10 or 15% down payment and have your equity and appreciation grow, because if you don't get into that, you're going to keep paying rent and you're going to continue to have to keep saving more due to inflation and rising home prices. Hopefully that makes sense. Kind of a lot going on there. If you're confused by that, just drop a comment. Happy to explain it further. The other thing about this is no HOA fees. So in a lot of areas, HOAs are very common. HOA fees can range greatly. Some areas there's an HOA around here that's $9 a month, and there's HOAs around here that are $450 a month. So that varies greatly, and that can take into account what you qualify for and therefore what your needed income would be. In contrast, the 6 figures needed now in 2020, an annual income of just over $76,000 was sufficient to afford a median priced home. For context, households currently earn a median income of $74,580, according to the most recent U.S. Census Bureau data available. Again, we kind of talked about this in the previous article. This suggests that homeownership has been put further out of reach for most middle-class buyers over the past 4 years. And again, for those just joining, this is simply why there is a cover of Joe Biden on the thumbnail for this live stream. Of course, everybody has their own thoughts on government policies, economic policies. At the end of the day, because this has grown over the last 4 years, and over the last 4 years, we've had a president, they kind of are on the hook for it. And that president could have been anybody. It could have been freaking Kermit, for all I care. If Kermit was president during this, his picture would be on the thumbnail. So this is not a political spiel. This just has to do with the timing of what we're experiencing. And as we all know, Americans care about a few things when they're thinking about a president, and the economy is one of the big ones. The decrease in affordability reflects the steady rise in home ownership costs. Median home prices have risen 27% since 2022, and mortgage rates have nearly doubled in that time. And those two things coupled together have really created the gap that we're seeing between needed income and median home pricing. As a result, the number of places where you need to earn $100,000 or more to afford a median-priced home has climbed from 7 to 23 since January of 2022. Here's a look at the salary required in those areas. So here we go. This is the list that I've been wanting to get into, where you can see in ranking what's the most expensive places, well, rather, where you need the most income to afford the average priced home. No surprise, number one, my home state, California. In case you didn't know, it takes a lot of money to live in California. According to this study, $197,000 per year in income to buy a median priced home. Obviously, the median priced home in the national average is a little over 400,000. Let's punch into the Google machine. What is the median priced home in California? So, geez. So according to data from the California Association of Realtors, existing single family homes sold for a median of $859,800 in August of 2023. Yowzer. Now, that number is probably even a little bit higher now, because that's actually coming up on almost a year ago. Now, as we all know, housing prices and data tend to lag pretty far, usually at least 3 to 6 months. So it's important to realize that this number is probably only higher. So we're talking about double the national average across the US for what you see in California. So no surprise that you need almost $200,000 per year in income for an average California home. Now, if we get some help with interest rates, that will increase the affordability somewhat. But the fear is, with lower interest rates, prices could even accelerate further higher. So if you're a buyer, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. Yes, you want the lower interest rates because it will give you a little bit of relief. But if you get the lower interest rates, it could mean more competition and higher prices for the same house. All right, so back to our list. Then we have Hawaii in number 2 with $185,829 in terms of average income, which it's interesting. Obviously, California and Hawaii are very close. Hawaii is gorgeous. It's kind of surprising to me that California outranks Hawaii, because Hawaii is such a wonderful place to live in terms of weather, tropical feel, and obviously anybody who's ever been there could probably testify to that. I know that California obviously has a much bigger economy just because of the sheer size of the state, and I wonder if maybe that plays probably the most important role in it, in terms of why it's not even more expensive, but a decent amount more expensive than Hawaii. And then at kind of a distant third place, there's a pretty sharp drop off. California, Hawaii, kind of close there. District of Columbia, so Washington, D.C., $167,871 needed in income. Let's go down and keep going. Massachusetts, so not a far off fourth place, $162,471 needed in annual income. And then in fifth place, Washington State, which a pretty decent size disparity between number 3 and number 5. Washington State needs $156,814 in annual income to afford the median house in Washington State. Colorado coming in sixth place, $152,229, followed by New Jersey, $152,186. Then New York at number 8, a little further down on the list than I would have thought. And I think maybe this is because in New York, obviously you have New York City, which is an extremely expensive place to live, but that is a pretty small portion of New York. I know that in upstate New York, there's some more rural areas where possibly the average price per home is a little bit lower and maybe brings it down a little bit. But still, nonetheless, in New York State, $148,000 per year in annual income. Then we have Utah, which is kind of a surprise to me. Utah at number 9, almost $134,000 in income needed per year to afford the median priced home. I kind of thought Utah would be a little bit more affordable, but I know it's a gorgeous state, and if you're an outdoor person, lots to do there. Just still a little bit of a surprise to me. Rhode Island, one of our smallest states, $132,343 in income needed, probably getting a little bit of the halo effect from the New York City area. Obviously, Rhode Island, very close. It's somewhat commutable. Also, New Jersey there. See New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island. My guess, and this is just a pure guess, they're probably getting a halo effect from the New York City downtown area with just so many jobs and so much commerce being there, and with real estate being so expensive in those areas, people spreading out to different areas. I know that my brother lives in New Jersey, and he commutes to New York City for work. So I have a feeling Rhode Island, New Jersey, and New York are probably being lifted up by New York City. Montana in 11th with $131,357. New Hampshire, $130,329. Oregon, $129,129. Connecticut, $119,614. And again, as we saw in the first article, the West and the Northeast. And sure enough, we are seeing it in full swing here. Florida, always kind of thought to be a little bit more affordable, the land for retirees. Florida got increased in huge popularity during the pandemic. And I would love to see where Florida was on the rankings this time 4 years ago. Vermont at $114,471, almost the same as Florida. Number 17, Idaho, again, $114,386. So we're starting to get a little bit more tightly grouped as we go down. Idaho is an interesting one for me because, again, during the pandemic, big boom for Idaho. Idaho and Florida were like the two places that were hitting the news in mid 2020 and into 2021 as markets in more urban and suburban areas, like your LAs, your San Diegos, your Seattles, especially people in the tech industry in Seattle. A lot of them migrated to Idaho for the affordability. It's a beautiful state. It has gorgeous outdoor amenities and recreation, and it drew a lot of people to it. Idaho since has kind of bounced back a little bit, and we're seeing some housing prices decline a little, but still from the gains that they made during the pandemic, even a slight decline. I mean, you're still up over the past 4 years, double-digit figures in home values. So I would be curious to know more of the statistics and data behind Idaho and its ranking. And again, like Florida, this would be a really interesting one to see what the average income needed to buy the average home is if it was 4 years ago. It would be very interesting to know. Nevada, this is one that surprised me, $111,557. Nevada was always thought as being a very affordable place. You know, I mean, there were people that were like, I can't afford LA. I'm going to go live in Las Vegas because I can buy a condo for $112,000. And now, well, those days are gone. And obviously Las Vegas being the big driver in Nevada, Las Vegas has grown. I mean, they have a professional hockey team. They have a professional football team, and it looks like Sorry, Oakland Athletics fans. It looks like they're pretty much going to get a professional baseball team in the next couple years or so. So it's growing incredibly, and that's probably one of the big factors as to why Nevada is being brought up in terms of money needed for the median priced home. Arizona, that's the biggest surprise for me. $110,000 needed to afford the average home in Arizona. Again, like Nevada, Arizona was always thought of one of those states where, you could get a deal. Phoenix, temperatures can get hot there, and it usually kept the housing market a little bit more reasonable in terms of pricing. But heck, again, during the pandemic, people scrambled for affordability, and people are still continuing to scramble for affordability. And there's been a lot of Californians moving to areas like Arizona and Nevada, and certainly could be pumping up these numbers a little bit. Rounding out the top 23, we have Virginia at 106, Maine at 102, and Texas breaking the $100,000 mark by just $629. Again, Texas is one of those states where affordability was, looked at to be a little bit better. The one thing with Texas, and if there's any Texans in the live stream, would love to know what you think about this. The main drawback I hear from people in Texas is the way that they do their property taxes. Apparently, it can be kind of reevaluated sort of at the government's discretion, which can make property taxes very difficult to pay. After all, if you think your property taxes are one amount and then 2 years later the market goes crazy and the government decides to reassess at market value, all of a sudden your property taxes could shoot up. Now in California, the voters passed a proposition where property taxes are capped at a 2% tax increase per year. So one of the beauties of California real estate is actually that piece of legislation. So I, as a California homeowner, know that my property taxes, although they will increase, are going to increase at a pretty slow and steady rate, which makes it much easier to adjust to. We've heard stories of people in Texas, especially those on fixed incomes, that just had a really hard time affording new property taxes because they went from paying a couple $100s a year to now a couple $1,000s a year. 4 years ago, only states and 4 years ago, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading. 4 years ago, only states and districts with the highest housing costs in the country required a six-figure salary to afford a typical home. This includes California, Hawaii, Massachusetts, and New York. States with the highest percentage of homeowners spending more than 30% of their gross income on housing, according to LendingTree. However, as home prices continue to rise, more states have become unaffordable for the average wage earner. This includes migration hotspots. We kind of talked about that. That were popular during the height of the pandemic due to their relatively low prices, including Utah, Montana, and Idaho. Wow, it's almost like what I noticed actually came true. The value these markets once offered has since been offset by a rapid rise in home prices. In Montana, the income needed to buy a median-priced home increased 77% since 2022, the largest jump of all states. That literally like blows my mind. In just not even 4.5 years, the income needed for a median-priced home increased 77%. That, my friends, is insanity. Wage gains have not kept up with home prices either. Wages grew 23% from last quarter of 2019 through November 2023, according to the Center for American Progress Analysis of Bureau of Labor Statistics data. Now, that's great. 23% in wage gain is great, but when you're talking about a 77% increase, a 40% increase, even a 30% increase in home prices and money needed in order to afford an average price home, 23% is a drop in the bucket in terms of what people need. That said, homes are still affordable in 14 states if you earn less than $75,000. Almost all of these states are in the Midwest or South and include Mississippi, Ohio, Arkansas, Indiana, Kentucky, Iowa, and Oklahoma, as the least expensive places to buy a home. I don't think that comes much as a surprise. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that more people head that direction. Again, as the popularity and just viability rises in remote-based work, I wouldn't be surprised if people look to those areas. Obviously, they offer a little bit slower pace of life depending on where you go in those states. And, it could offer the change of pace that a lot more people are seeking. Plus, it's the opportunity to become a homeowner. And as we all know, the stats, homeowners are 40% more likely to, homeowners are 40 times more wealthy than renters. And still, owning a home is the best way to financial freedom and generational wealth. So we are going to probably, I think now, and by the way, I'll take this moment to, again, just say, if you're in chat, thanks for joining me. Post in the comments where you're watching from. And of course, would love to hear from you. This, again, real estate's hyper local. So every area is going to be completely different. And if you're watching an area where you feel like the housing market's a little bit different than maybe some of these national averages, I would love to hear it and know. So now we're going to put on a video, and this is, stop this, present, share my screen with this. All right. Make this full screen so y'all can see it.
Housing hurdles, no, that's correct. Soaring home prices and soaring mortgage rates keeping many prospective home buyers just out of the market. Jerry Willis has the story. How much do you need to afford the median home?
All right, steel yourself here. You need more than $110,000.
Okay.
Yeah, no kidding, right? A new bankruptcy study showing that the required salary to make that purchase has jumped 46% in just 4 years.
That's wild. And this is a really, really good graphic. So as you can see, and we kind of talked about some of these numbers. So this isn't going to be, drastically new information for you guys that have been watching since the beginning of the stream. But a 46% increase. We were at just under $76,000 in January of 2020, pre-COVID pandemic, when the world was great. There was no inflation. Interest rates were at 4.5%. And you could buy a home with a $75,000 income, to where we are now, just 4 years later. And a 46% increase is ginormous. It doesn't take an expert to realize that. Again, why this has happened, it's hard to say. Supply and demand. We have millennials that have just entered the housing market with force. We have boomers still actually being a very large segment of buyers. But at the end of the day, it's tough for the middle class. It's very tough for millennials right now with this type of increase.
Home buyers only needed to make $76,000 back in 2022. And the issue? Widespread. You now need a six-figure salary to buy the average home in 23 states, including the District of Columbia.
That is crazy.
4 years ago, that number was just 6. Mortgage rates, of course, have played a role in this, but a small one. But home prices have, by and large, kept pace with the needed salary to buy them.
Wild. It's funny is I don't know why. I don't know why they did this. But if you look the home on the right, it's the same picture, right? The home on the left, obviously you can tell this is a professional photo from a brand new build. It's got the blue sky, the contrast is popped, nice green lawn, all this stuff. The one on the right, it's got they put these stupid boards over the window, and they're why there's an orange spray paint spot on the garage. I don't understand why they did that. Homes now are crappier than they were before. No, I'm not sure. I like how they just darkened the photo too, just to make it so the colors don't pop as much. It's something I noticed. I don't understand the point of this. But the data here is just still interesting. 307 before, 384. And this is even in a smaller time span. This is in 3 years. That previous slide was over 4 years. This was over just 3 years. So we're talking an increase of 25%. Yikes.
Them rising, rising, rising. The average home is up 42%, sitting at $412,000. Now, even though the housing market may be pricing people out, people shouldn't be too quick to think that renting is the solution. Since President Biden took office, rents are up nearly 21%.
This is really important. This is really important because, you know, a lot of people think, oh, okay, well, I can't afford to buy a house. And it's okay. It's more affordable to rent. Well, no. I mean, it might be on the surface because you think, oh, well, if the house that I want to buy or I would need, it's going to cost me, and these numbers are just, I'm making them up. If it costs me $3,200 a month in rent, well, I can rent that same house for $2,700 or $2,800 a month. And you think, oh, well, look at that. I'm going to save, you know, $300-400 a month, $500 a month, whatever it may be, by not buying a home. And I don't have to put that down payment down. So I still save all my cash. Well, it's true on the month-to-month basis, it is cheaper, but over the long run, that rent is going to keep increasing. And the home price is going to keep increasing. So your like I said, your goalpost keeps moving in order to buy that home, assuming you do want to buy. So while renting is more affordable on the surface, and maybe it is for a year or two, when rent goes up and you factor in the amount of money you've lost in rent versus the equity you haven't been gaining in paying a mortgage payment, almost every single time after about 3 or 4 years, it costs more money to rent. Renting is really only a good option if you know you're not going to be stationary. So if you know that you're not going to be living in a spot, maybe because of work, or you have a temporary job, or you know you've always wanted to go live in a big city for a couple of years and you work remote, you know you're going to do it. Okay, great. Renting is still a viable option. But as someone once told me long ago, the people that are happiest most about you wanting to rent long term is your landlord. So again, this is not a knock on people who rent rentals and people who rent, you know, those homes serve a purpose for people to at least have a place to live, but rent's expensive as well.
So where do you need to make the most to buy the average
This won't come
home?
as a
Some of
surprise.
these facts here are not going to surprise you, Stuart, at all. California at the top of the list, of course. You need almost $200,000 to buy the average home there, followed by Hawaii, Washington, D.C., Massachusetts, and Washington State. And the cheapest state, Stuart?
Mississippi.
You got it. That's right. You need only $63,000 there.
Still need 63,000 to get up there.
That's right.
22 states, it's 100 grand. Jerry, great stuff. Thank you very much indeed.
Wild, crazy stuff. And again, that just highlights some of the difficulties that people are facing. It's really difficult to just say, "Oh, I'm going to go out and buy a home." Interest rates are not making it easy either. You know, we've had, and I'm going to bring up in a second what I normally do on a live stream towards the end here when we talk about just sort of market update. It doesn't look like it's getting any easier. I'm going to give you a little bit of anecdotal evidence about where I am, again, in Claremont, California, which is about 35 miles east of Los Angeles. We're still seeing a seller's market. We're seeing things sell very, very quickly. It's wild. In fact, speaking of selling quickly, I'm going to bring up a property that sold. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. I want to find a house. It's, again, still in this market. It's expensive. And here we go. I'm going to bring this home up really quick. I'm going to share the screen. So this is a home in my local market here. This is a 4-bed, 2-bath home, 2,000 square feet. We'll take a look at the pictures. Beautiful photos. It's a nice home. It's a nice home. It's not stellar. It's not amazing. It's had some updates. It's very well maintained. I saw this home in person, so I can vouch. It was very, very well maintained. It did have some good updates, but not a crazy luxurious home, and just a nice, comfortable home. You can see some of the appliances are a little bit older. The ovens are a little bit older. Pretty stereotypical rooms. The bathrooms are nice and clean, not mega updated, not mega upgraded, but nice nonetheless. Okay, so why am I showing you this home? Well, this home sold for $1.13 million. That's a lot of money. I'm going to show you what the asking price was. If it says here, the asking price of this home was $1,025,000 when it hit the market. It sold for $1,130,000. It sold for plus 10% over the asking price. And mind you, this home just sold not that long ago. This was in the pre-peak buying and selling season. So this doesn't even account for the sort of the spring and summer. This kind of sold in late winter. So pretty insane to think about a home, that's nice. It's got a good location. It's a great home, but nothing super special. And it sold for over $100,000 more than the asking price. So again, this just goes to show you that buyers, if you're out there, the relief doesn't appear to be coming really anytime soon. The other thing I want to share with you guys is from the CME group. This is something that we usually cover in a lot of our live streams. This is the Fed Watch tool from the CME group. I'm going to share this with you guys right now so you can see. Bingo. So what this is the CME group is a group that analyzes a bunch of metrics and data. And what they do is they basically try to guess what the Fed is going to do with interest rates. So right now we can see that they're going to meet May 1st, 2024. And this bar right here shows that there is a 98.7% chance that the Fed keeps the current interest rate in terms of the Fed rate. This is not mortgage interest rates, but again, we've talked about this. Mortgage interest rates typically are moving lockstep with the federal rate. So let's see what they're going to do in June. There's been a lot of talk of a June rate cut. But of course, it always is changing. So if we do click on June, the CME group thinks that there's a 37.7% chance that the target Fed funds rate is going to stay the same. But there's a 61.5% chance that it could come down a quarter point or so, possibly even up to a half point, although I don't think that's going to happen. But again, that varies based on a lot of things. There's economic data coming out like every week, and it always seems to be changing. Markets react differently, but this is at least a little bit of a good sign. Now, again, what is a good sign? If interest rates go down, yes, that does increase affordability for home buyers as their payments will go down for the exact same price house. However, when interest rates go down, typically housing prices, they go up. And it's widely thought that when interest rates go down, it's going to pull a lot of buyers off the sidelines. We could see an increase in market activity. So not only do homes typically go up just naturally when rates go down, also when rates go down, and especially with pent-up demand, we could see a larger number of people looking to purchase homes. So those two things coupled together could further elevate home prices. And again, it still depends on where you are in the nation and what your specific market looks like. Obviously, it varies across the US, and goes without saying the world, but in many markets, we're still seeing it to be very seller friendly. So again, this is a really cool tool. This is a CME group. If you just Google CME Fed Watch tool, this will come up, and they plan it out. They even go out to July. If we go to July, we see that there's even a quarter, a 25% chance that we could see a 475 to 500 BPS for the target rate. I don't know if we'll see that. I think a lot of home buyers would like that, but it's just too difficult to know right now. So again, it's what we're seeing right now is just with the economy the way that it is, lots of inflation. It's causing a lot of people to have to make a lot of money, even in some markets that we thought were previously affordable. Again, I thought the biggest surprise in that was areas like Arizona and Utah and Tennessee. Those were in the top 23 areas where you need to make at least $100,000 or more. That was a big surprise to me. Again, I always kind of figured that those areas were kind of, the more affordable areas, and to see them make the list is a really big surprise. Of course, we're not surprised by California, Hawaii, DC, areas like that, where there just tends to be higher incomes and more expensive real estate. But areas that, even Utah was a surprise. Montana was another one that was up there. In fact, I'm just going to go back to that list really quick because I thought it was so interesting. Let me get this on the screen really quick. So here we have it. I don't know. You guys let me know. What do you think is the biggest surprise on the list? Pop into the comments. Let me know if any of these are surprising to you. Again, I think Arizona, and not only was Arizona on the list, but where it came in on the list, it's 19th. It's not like it barely just kind of squeaked in. You need $110,000 in income to afford a medium price home in Arizona. I think that's probably the biggest surprise for me. The other two are Florida and Idaho. And the reason I say that is because I think it would be really interesting to know where these two states were just 4 years ago. A lot of people migrated during the pandemic to Idaho and Florida to get some of that housing relief. And I think that those two states saw a huge increase in the numbers needed in terms of annual income needed to afford a medium priced home. It would be really cool to see what those figures were just 3 or 4 years ago. So, it's no surprise that the current state of the economy is making it difficult for home buyers. Obviously, the middle class is just getting squeezed. The middle class has been getting squeezed for some time now. And again, I started the stream off by saying the middle class has really always been thought of as sort of the engine that drives the U.S. economy. It's always been that sort of meaty portion of the curve. And unfortunately, the middle class is facing a lot of difficulties now. I mean, I just saw, this isn't the best data in the world, but I saw, I think it was on TikTok or Instagram or something, where there was a guy that was saying, he said he makes pretty good money. He lives in an area that he always figured was a lower cost of living state. He didn't say where he was from, but it kind of sounded like possibly somewhere in the South, just based on his accent. And he was flabbergasted. It cost him over $100 for just 2 days worth of groceries for his family. Now, he didn't say how big his family was, but if we go with the average size, we're probably talking 2 or 3 kids. So a family unit of like 4 or 5 people. But to spend over $100 on 2 days worth of groceries is absolutely insane. He said that was basically 2 dinners and some snacks and a couple of other things. So it's no surprise that people are feeling it, and it's translating obviously into housing as well. And some of these numbers, again, it's just crazy. The other one that stood out to me is that, a Zillow analysis released in February found that prospective home buyers would have to earn more than $106,000 annually to be able to buy a typical home in the U.S. That's an 80% increase from the $59,000 yearly income the website predicted a household would need to comfortably afford in 2022. That's mind-blowing. 80% increase. And of course, now we're even above that February number of 106. And now we're at 110,000, almost 111,000 per year to afford a medium priced home. Now, again, we saw that this was taken into account with a 20% down payment. And again, I really think that a lot of prospective home buyers out there need to get off the 20% down payment fixation. We've typically used that as the gold standard. It still is the gold standard, but you can buy a home with less than 20% down. You do not need 20% down. And in most cases, I would argue that it's better to get in at 10 or 15% down than try to wait and save up for 20%. Because again, the longer you wait, the more you're spending on rent while you wait. And it's a moving goalpost as home prices tend to typically increase. And again, we see home prices increasing for at least the next 3 to 5 years, just given supply and demand and basic demographics. It's only going to take you longer to save 20%. So you're better off getting in the home now, starting to build that equity now, take advantage of some tax write-offs, stop paying rent, and it will also stabilize your monthly payments. Because again, that mortgage payment, assuming it's a 30-year fixed loan, doesn't change, but your rent could go up almost at any time. So that's why I think if you have that 10%, if you've got 15%, heck, even if you have 5% down, and that home is affordable and makes sense to you, and you can afford it, get in, do it, start building that equity, and start your journey of homeownership. Again, it's not about timing the market; it's about time in the market. The longer you're in the market, the quicker that money can grow for you, that equity can grow, and the quicker you can reap the benefits of home ownership. Again, just wild stuff. It's really surprising to learn that you need, in 23 areas, 22 states plus DC, we're looking at 100,000 more per year just for the median. Again, one thing to keep in mind is that's total household income, right? So if you're buying a home and you have a partner, a spouse, husband, wife, heck, even if you buy a home with a friend or family member, that can even alleviate some of the pain. And that's something that we've also seen is becoming more and more common. People are now opening up the idea that, hey, you know what? Maybe I earn $104,000 a year. I've got a friend that earns $92,000 a year. We're both renting. Why are we both renting? We could pool our resources, we could pool our abilities, and we could own a property together. Now, obviously, that comes with some, potential issues. You have to really know, and trust the person that you're getting into that deal with. But everything can be handled through properly done paperwork and contracts. And if that's the way that you can start building some equity and get into the homeownership game, heck, maybe that's the way to go. So it's about thinking outside the box. Buying a property with family is now becoming more common. And I don't even mean just going to parents or family members for down payment funds, for gifts for the down payment. I mean, actually buying the property with them and trying to do a profit share type of thing. That's something that's becoming more popular, especially in the markets where affordability is at very, very low points, like your major metropolitan areas, California, New York, New Jersey, DC, so on and so forth. So there's still some things that you can do to sort of alleviate the pressures of having to afford a home. It's still tough out there, obviously, as we know. But again, you just have to kind of get creative, and hopefully the Fed will go a favorable way and provide some relief for interest rates. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this stream. I appreciate you guys stopping in and watching. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message on YouTube. My contact information is down below. If you need a real estate agent, I am located in the Southern California area, LA, kind of Inland Empire area, but I have a network of real estate agents and mortgage lenders all across the United States. If you're looking for someone trustworthy that knows what they're doing, whether or not it's in my market or elsewhere, I can find the right agent for you. In the comments below, I will add a link where you can reach out to me, fill out a form, tell me what you're looking for, and we can get you started on your home buying journey. It's also in the description of the video that you're looking at right now. Thanks again for joining me. I hope you all have a wonderful Wednesday evening, and I'll see you on the next live stream.